Hi, this is Kelly. A quick note about this interview with Corey Kupfer. Corey and I spoke for well over an hour, so I decided to split the interview into two parts. This is part one, and after you listen to it, I'm sure you're going to want to listen to part two to hear what else Corey has to say. Enjoy. This podcast is sponsored by Bigger Brains, online training that won't bore you to tears. Expand the minds of your workforce at getbiggerbrains.com.
Welcome to Permission to Speak, the video blog and podcast that loiters at the intersection of leaders who want their people to speak up, technology that facilitates connections, and results that serve our higher purpose. Now, here's your host, Kelly Vandever.
Hi, welcome to the podcast. This is Kelly Vandever, and my special guest today is Corey Kupfer. Corey is an expert strategist, dealmaker, and business consultant with more than 30 years of professional negotiating experience as a successful entrepreneur and attorney. The founder and president of Authentic Enterprises and the Authentic Business Academy, Corey is dedicated to inspiring authenticity in business through speaking, training, and consulting on topics such as authentic negotiating, authentic deal making, building authentic business relationships, and authentic conversations about difference. In his book, Authentic Negotiating, Clarity, Detachment, and Equilibrium, the three keys to true negotiating success and how to achieve them, Corey draws on decades of experience effectively negotiating business deals and disputes to reveal the real internal work it takes to become a truly great negotiator. Welcome, Corey, to the podcast.
It's so great to be here. I'm really excited about being on the show.
Well, thank you so much. And as you know, we always start with a couple of quirky questions to get to know our interviewees a little better as people first. So my first quirky question for you is, tell us, what is your favorite guilty pleasure television show?
You know, for me, it's The Voice, the singing show. And what I don't watch a lot of TV, and I don't watch a lot of those kind of shows like the Dancing with the Star, all those competitions. I don't watch any of that. But there's something about The Voice. First of all, I think it's because they're not facing people, so people are truly judged on their talent, not the way they look and that kind of stuff, which I kind of like. And then they have the coaching thing. And I'm a sucker for like these stories of people who you wouldn't expect, or you see them grow. You know, they start out really nervous, or they don't know how good they are, and then they get really, you know, they get better over time and they come into their own. So I've always loved that kind of stuff. Like even when I watch like the Iron Man every year, I watch that not to watch the top competitors, but to watch the backstory of all these people who are doing amazing things. So it's that journey of growth that I love watching. So that's, you know, so I don't miss The Voice.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, of course, I have to ask, do you have aspirations to be on The Voice?
No, listen, one of the things that you could really have in life that serves you well is self-awareness. And I am extremely aware that I cannot sing. The funny part is, I'll tell you quickly, so my wife can sing. My wife actually has an album out. She comes out of the arts. She's doing other stuff now, but she's really, really talented. But when I was in junior high school, they had a chorus, and they tested all the boys. Of course, as a boy in junior high school, you didn't want to be in chorus. I was in woodshop, and they pulled me out of woodshop because I was one of two kids who had a deeper voice. My voice had changed already, and I was forced to be in chorus. And we actually sang as a school chorus at an event at Carnegie Hall. Not, you know, it was like in New York, and I got a trophy, not because they gave everybody a trophy. So when my wife tells me how bad I sing, which she's right, I always say to her, listen, you're not the one who got the trophy for singing.
And has she gotten to sing at Carnegie Hall?
Right, exactly.
Oh, too funny, too funny. Excellent. Okay. And our second quirky question is, tell us something surprising about yourself that most people don't already know.
I am really afraid of heights, or more accurately, falling, because some people like I can be in the 100th floor of the Freedom Tower in New York, and with a closed window, and some people get nervous even looking out there. But if there's no chance of me falling, like a cable car, I'm fine. But like when you're hiking and people on the edge of that cliff looking over, that's not me. And the reason why I think it would be surprising to a lot of people who don't know me well is because if they see my Facebook and things like that, they'll see me jumping out of a plane or rappelling off a 200-foot cliff, or talking about jumping off a bungee platform. And so they wouldn't think. But the reason I do those things is because I do have this one phobia, and I don't like having anything that really holds me back in my life. So every few years I do something, that to try to break through it. And people say to me, oh, so now you've broken through, you're not afraid. No, I'm deathly afraid every single time I do it. The fear doesn't go away. I just do it because I don't like having anything stop me.
So are you looking for the next great height thrill then, or?
It's funny that you say that. I'm probably coming due, it was, I think about 2 years ago that I did these rappels off cliffs, which for me was scarier than jumping off the plane with it, because you have to actually lean backwards. I mean, you literally lean backwards off a cliff. I mean, it's crazy. So yeah, I think that was 2 years ago. So it's usually every few years I do something. So I'm probably due, but I don't know. I don't have anything particular in mind yet.
All right. Well, I'll keep my eye open for something. I'm afraid of heights, but I'm not that brave. So. Excellent. Okay. And then our transitional question, to start talking a little more about the topic we brought you here to talk about. So when we talked a lot about authenticity in your intro. So when was the first time you really got how important authenticity is for making a difference in the lives of people?
Yeah, it's interesting. From the time I was a little kid, I had this thing about hypocrisy. I hate to use this example because my parents I'm very blessed. My parents are amazing, wonderful people. I had a great upbringing. But there was one thing around, I was raised Jewish, and around we didn't go to synagogue. We weren't very religious. But around the high holidays, right? Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, we didn't go to synagogue, but we couldn't play sports. We had to get dressed up and sit around and do nothing. And I always found that very, hypocritical. So from early on, I had this sense that I didn't like stuff that didn't align. And it was a process over time. But I think where I got it most deeply, and what really helped set me on the course of what, my life and my work is about for the last, almost 20 years now, was in the late 90s. I started doing some work around race relations, and I'm somebody who identifies as white, and so people think that's unusual. And my wife happens to be African American. They sort of assume I started doing that work after we met, but it was actually the other way around. I met her because of the work that I was doing. So I created this project that at the time was called Conversations About Race. It's now Authentic Conversations About Race. It's part of the whole process, and it's a subset of Authentic Conversations About Difference. And it's where people have one-on-one cross-cultural dialogues about race. And it's not about the issues. It's not about, whatever it is, affirmative action or policing, or it's really about what was it like for me growing up? What was it like for you growing up? What I always want to know about your group that I was afraid to ask. And there's a facilitated way that we did it. We've done it in groups. We've done it in community groups, at schools, for students and professors. We did it at the World Conference Against Racism in Durban, South Africa in 2001, where we had Black South Africans and white South Africans talking to each other about race not that long after the end of apartheid. I mean, you want to talk about an amazing experience. And what I found was that I just started doing these on my own because I was inspired by a Bill Bradley quote when he was running for president, where he essentially said, if you are not having conversations about race with a person of another race, you're part of the problem. And when I started doing that on my own with people of color, different backgrounds that I knew, every conversation looked different, but the common element was deeper intimacy, right? Because we had gotten to a more authentic place, because there was some unsaid thing that we hadn't talked about beforehand, no matter how close we were, no matter how much we talked about our love lives and our family and our finances and the issues around race. We never had that one-on-one conversation, as most people don't. And so when I started having those, the common element was deeper intimacy. We always got closer. So when I turned it into a project, that's really what's happened. And that really got me. I mean, people would get to this super authentic place, and people would be crying and hugging each other. And, I can tell you stories. I mean, just one quickly, just because we were in Pennsylvania at a community group, and this young African-American woman with an older white gentleman, came in and participated in the project. And it turns out that this was her father-in-law. And when she married his son, he basically wrote them off because he was not it wasn't acceptable to him that his son married an African-American woman. How she got him to come to this thing was, credit to her. By the end of the talk, they were both in tears, hugging each other, talking about he welcomed her to the family. I still get emotional.
Yeah.
And it was a decade plus ago. Those are the kind of results we got. So you want to talk about getting to a place of authenticity. So I had that experience, and then I started applying that because in my law firm work, I'm a lawyer, I have a law firm, I do deals. I'm dealing in corporations and companies and entrepreneurs. And I used to keep those things separate. But for me, part of the authenticity conversation is really being able to show up fully and bring everything you have and you are and you believe in and to life in all aspects, in all places. Like to not have it be compartmentalized. And as I've done that in what I think is my own authenticity journey, it's brought that work together. So now I bring that kind of authenticity into entrepreneurial and big and large companies through not only authentic conversations about difference, but also authentic negotiating, authentic deal making, all of that element, that connection, connection within a truth in each other, and universal truth is a core part of my work.
Wow, that is fascinating. Okay. I feel like I just want to ask a million questions. So, but I have to start somewhere, right? So where I originally thought I was going to start was to ask you some more about the negotiating, and I really am curious because when what you're talking about, what you just shared about those authentic relationships about differences. The people became closer because they were willing to share information about themselves, be vulnerable, if you will, with themselves. But I think of the opposite of that when I think of negotiating, right? Because people keep things close to the vest, and they don't want to really reveal their real motives or whatever. So, are you saying that you have more open conversations during the negotiating process, or maybe that's where we could start?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So there's two things to that. One is I want to make a distinction between authenticity and total transparency. I mean, because you're authentic doesn't mean you need to tell everybody everything up front, so in a negotiation, you don't need to. But on the flip side, unfortunately, a lot of the training out there and a lot of the ways people approach negotiating is very positional and game playing and tactical.
Right.
And a lot of it's manipulative, and even the stuff that's, decent, like better, not manipulative on a tactical basis, it's at that level. It's not at a deep level. And I've been a professional negotiator as an attorney, as a paid, negotiator outside of that for over 30 years. And I've, in business handling deals, contracts, disputes, partner, issues, all that kind of stuff. And what that experience has told me, and and in 30 years doing it day in and day out, it's a lot of experience. What that has told me is that deals don't fall apart, or conflict situations don't go bad because somebody knows a tactic or because they were good or bad at this. It goes bad because people fail to do the internal work. This is where the authenticity conversation comes in. To get, it's the subtitle of my book, Clarity, Detachment, and Equilibrium, CDE, right? So they don't do the work, first of all, to get crystal clear on really what works for them, what doesn't work for them, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and the underlying why. Like, why do they care about that? A lot of people think they care about something, but it's not really coming from that place, right? So, I can't tell you how many deals I've saved. Let's say somebody's selling their company, and the seller is somebody who's built that company for 25 years. It's their baby, right? And the deal, they say they want to sell, and the buyer's interested, and the terms seem to be worked out, but somehow the deal's not getting done. And what you find a lot of times is that owner, that founder, has something that's not letting them let go, right? They think they want it, but emotionally they haven't done the internal work to figure it out. And I've been able to get down to that level, even when it's the other side sometimes, and figure out, you know what? If we let this person continue to have an office, maybe even their nice corner office, to come into, right? That's going to get the deal done, because what they're really afraid of is that they're going to be irrelevant, or they're going to be totally disconnected from the company, or they're not going to have anywhere to go, or maybe they need to be chairman emeritus, or maybe there's a couple of clients they really care about, and on a consulting basis or whatever basis, you keep them involved, right? It's about them getting down to their deepest motivations of why or why not they're doing a deal. So the clarity piece is the objectives and the why. Then the ability to stay detached to the outcome, right? People either fall in love with the deal, or their anger, fear, scarcity, upset, comes up, and they lose their detachment. And then this ability to keep equilibrium so you don't get thrown off in a tough negotiating session. So that whole process, which, I detail, the Authentic Negotiating book has a lot more in it. But the point is, that's an internal body of work. And for me, the first step in authenticity is an internal body of work. With conversations about race or conversations about difference, you can't really share with people honestly in a way that connects unless you've done some work to be self-aware about what's going on, because those aren't surface conversations. And at the same time, people go into negotiations without that kind of prep or deep internal work, and it becomes a surface conversation. And a lot of times, that negotiation is going to result in an ongoing relationship, right? You're bringing in a partner, it's with a vendor, an employee. There's a million examples. And if you're not coming from an authentic place, and you're not truly, negotiating from a place that will achieve your objectives and help achieve theirs and build a relationship as opposed to win, you're going to run into trouble as well. So that's where the connection starts to come in.
Okay. So I want to take this in a different direction, but I'm still curious enough to ask. So you talk about the detachment piece, and either people fall in love with the deal or they get that fear thing. I can understand the fear part, but why is it bad to fall in love with the deal?
So here's what I've seen, right? If you've done the work like I tell people to do and prep my clients and that kind of stuff, you've gotten crystal clear on everything that works for you or doesn't work for you in the deal, right? There's a clear written objectives list. And that doesn't mean you're inflexible. I mean, maybe new information comes up, but fundamentally, you know what you want. What happens is in the negotiation, a lot of times people will go off of that without realizing it, because they've either fallen in love with the deal or they're already spending the money in their head. Like what happens, people, you get into the deal, you get really excited about it. Maybe it's really time for you to sell your business and you're going into an adventure, or maybe you want to travel the world, or you're looking to pay 100 rounds of golf or be with your grandkids or whatever it is, right? And you start envisioning that, and you're there already. Now the deal's not closed, and people who do a lot of deals know the deal's not closed till it's closed, right? You shouldn't be spending the money. You shouldn't be making, now, you should keep a positive attitude about it. I don't mean being negative. But the point is that people get so far along, they get so vested in the outcome, that a lot of times then they end up making concessions in a negotiation, which if they look at their objectives up front and the negotiating strategy that we designed, they never would have made. And they end up doing a bad deal. And they end up doing a bad deal because they've either fallen in love with the deal or fallen in love of their vision of what will happen after the deal's over for them.
Gotcha.
And if you true up where they end up to what they said was acceptable or not, there's a significant disconnect. And if that's a natural evolution and you learn stuff about yourself and you've made changes, that might be okay. But a lot of times people end up regretting doing what the deals they do because it didn't line up to what they really wanted.
Okay, great. Okay, that helped. That helped a lot. All right, so I could see you even mentioned in your discussion that it can be any kind of different negotiating. Some of your examples have been about negotiating to close a business type of transaction. But what about what you've talked about applies in the day-to-day building authentic relationships that you talk about? Can you go into that a little more?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I guess what underlies a lot of what I talk about is the first piece is that self-awareness, is that internal work piece, right? Because again, if you don't know what truly drives you, you don't know what you really want and don't want, it affects relationships as well, right? You want to talk about relationship with your significant other, it's the easiest one to see, right? Because they're with you, more than anybody else probably. And, if you're in a good relationship, they want you to be happy, they want to please you. But if you don't know what you want, how can they know what you want, right? In business, with employees, et cetera, if people aren't clear on their objectives, certainly as a leader, your employees don't know, what to do. So that's absolutely crucial. And then some of the things I talk about. So I give talks on building authentic business relationships too, and I have 5 tenets which we can go into about that. And if you look at a lot of them, like for example, I talk about giving first, right, in a relationship. That's my first tenet. And if you do any kind of work around networking and building business, whatever, the smart people will always tell you to give first, and not only give first, but give without an expectation of return, right? Not as a quid pro quo, not as a tactic. So one of the ways where that comes in on a common level, and I think there's so many, whether it's trainings on building team, trainings on networking, trainings on negotiation, there's so much of it that's taught on a tactical level. And I think there's a reason for that. Frankly, most people, including myself, listen, I don't want to go to the gym and work out with my trainer, right? I want to wake up, somebody give me a quick fix tip and me be able to do it, and I'm in the shape of my life, right? That's what I want. That's human nature. But the reality is anything that takes work, if you want to be great at anything, certainly get mastery or even be better at it, it takes work. And there's a big body of internal work. And that's consistent across everything that I do, whether it's negotiating, deal making, business relationships, or conversations about difference. The first piece of work is an internal body of work to get that self-awareness, to figure out what you really want and don't want, what works for you, what are you about, why are you here, what's your why. And if you don't do that work, then you're going to be operating on a tactical level. So in my give first, you can give first as a tactic, right, to make it seem like you're a nice person and hope that the business person is going to give you, something back. But people sense that stuff, right? I mean, that's where we get back to the conversation of authenticity, right? We all know that it's not just what we say, it's our body language, right? It's not just our body language, it's our tone of voice. And people can read that. And they have courses on how you read that. And then they have courses on how you mask that, right? And instead of masking that, like the reading stuff is fine. If you want to learn how to read people, that's useful. I remember we had an FBI guy came in to Entrepreneurs Organization, which I'm a member of one time, and they did it in connection with like hold'em poker, but you could use it for anything in negotiation on how you read people. When they do this, it means this. Maybe that's useful, but what it drives me crazy is the ones where they try to teach you how to mask it. Like, don't look up to the left because that means that. And then the whole time, like, why don't you figure out what's underlying all of that, get to a place of authenticity, act from there, and then you don't have to worry about the signals you're giving off because the signals will be consistent, right? And the problem is they keep now this is a great one. We have 45, this may not be, maybe it's 48, I don't know, something like 45 facial muscles that in combination give off hundreds of microfacial expressions. And we can't control those. Right? So, if you're a person that believes that we give off energy back and forth, there's that. If you don't believe in that, there's microfacial expressions. We're giving off information all the time is the point. And there's no way that we can mask it. So instead of doing these tips and easy tactics and whatever, let's do the real hard internal work, which, by the way, is tougher to preach and teach because, like me, I don't want my trainer to tell me I got to come see him 3 days a week and go to the gym. I want him to give me something, a pill, But the reality is that it takes the internal work.
So let's talk a little more about that internal work then. If we're reticent to do it, how do we get past that? I mean, you've motivated yourself to go to the gym, you've paid the trainer or whatnot, but what is the work that we need to do internally? Are there steps we can follow? Right. And maybe that's contrary to what you're just talking about, but do you know what I mean? I'm
a big believer in vision and purpose, right? Because it's easy. Let me take us now. I've been an entrepreneur for, almost 30 years now. And the entrepreneurial journey is a roller coaster, right? And if you don't have a bigger vision, and if you're talking about with employees, you should be building this with your team, there's mundane stuff they need to do every day, which is boring. There's there are challenges that come up that make it easy to quit, or find something easy to do or avoid it. If there's not a bigger vision, if there's not a compelling, for me, a lot of it is, for me personally, it's playing a game bigger than myself, which includes positively impacting other people. That's the biggest thing that motivates me. If I'm not playing, when I get into my worst spaces, I discover it's because I've narrowed my focus onto me, right? Whatever. It's a tough economy during a Great Recession, and finances are challenging, and I'm in the weeds about how I'm going to make my payrolls and whatever, right? When I'm smart, and usually I'll get there, but and over the years I've learned to get there sooner, but it still happens, right? To be able to turn around, to be able to step back and say, whoa, I'm in the weeds here. I'm in this, narrow box. I need to take a step back. I need to get reconnected to why I'm doing this as an entrepreneur. I need to get reconnected to why I'm in this negotiation. I need to get reconnected to why I'm trying to build this business relationship or this team, right? What is my bigger vision and the impact that I want to have in the world and my family, for myself, whatever it is? And, what is that? What is that vision? What is that why? What is my purpose? When you can get reconnected to that, then, that's what really holds you. So I'll take, I used to have a weekend place before we got our place in California. We now split time. I used to have a weekend place up in the mountains in New York on a lake, and I would go up there. Whenever I needed time, I would take a weekend up there. Or sometimes it would be a few hours in New York outside of my office, whatever it is. Depending on the scope, and just take a step back, breathe a little bit. First of all, disconnect. Then, second of all, start doing visioning work. And there's a bunch of ways you can do that. But I think for me, that's the biggest thing. That's the first step. Is you got to connect to something bigger. You got to connect to something that's compelling for you.
So what if somebody has never thought to do that in their role as a leader in an organization, and they're not even quite sure how to answer that question? Is there some advice you could give them to think different directions to how to answer that question?
Yeah, so there's a few things. There's a few different techniques that I've used and I've given to. I've mentor various entrepreneurial companies, whether it's part of entrepreneurs organization or otherwise, and friends of mine and clients of mine. There's a number of different visioning tools out there. One of the ones I like that I created, which is sort of a combination of existing things out there, but I put a format around it. It's what I call a 5-3-1. So what I say to people is, you want to start 5 years out. What is your vision for your life, for your company, for your family? Usually you do it holistically, especially if you're an entrepreneur, because if you're an entrepreneur, your vision for your company should be so tied into your vision for your life, right? You want to build your company so your kids go to a great college, or you get to live somewhere, or you get to travel, or whatever it is. They're not unrelated, right? So you want to do a vision for what it looks like 5 years out. But here's the key thing. The key thing in the visioning work is that you don't look from today 5 years forward and say, oh, I want it to be this way then. You stand in you basically get to the place where it is today is 5 years from really today. Like you try to be in the present 5 years in the future. So I'll literally say, I forget what's today's date, September 5th, 2017. So I'll say, okay, it is September 5th, 2022. Okay. Right? Close your eyes, go through a visioning process of what your life looks like. Where are you living? What are you doing? What does your company look like? How many employees you have? What's your family situation? Where are you doing? And you take people through all senses. What do you hear? What do you see? What do you smell? What are you wearing? What are the colors? I mean, because the multisensory really gets you present in it. And then what I'll do is I'll have them come out of that and then draw, because the first thing is before you put something in language, there's things that show up. And I always, by the way, I can't draw more than a stick figure. So you don't need to be an artist. You don't need, this is just for you. I tell people. And, you have crayons, markers, pens, pencils, whatever. I mean, it doesn't have to be that complicated. And people draw whatever they draw. Some people draw a full scene. Some people draw like a symbol that means something to them. Whatever comes up for you, you draw it creatively and you don't judge it. Just whatever comes out is yours. It's not going to be on display anywhere. Don't worry about your level of talent. Then I have them write out a narrative of what does their day look like? What does their life look like? I wake up in the morning, my wife is next to me, my husband's next to me, my partner's next to me. The two kids are doing great. Joni is just graduated high school, whatever it is, right? We're living in this amazing house. We're actively involved in these charities, whatever it is. All right. So then you get your 5-year vision. Then you go to 3 years. So you're working backwards. And the question you ask yourself at 3 years is, what inevitably must be true in year 3 for year 5 to have occurred, because year 5's done, right? You envision it, it's done, it's going to happen. So it's not what do I need to get there? What inevitably must have happened? So, an easy example is if you have a kid that's a year and a half years old at year 5, then, you were probably pregnant, or your partner was pregnant, and you had to be pregnant in year 3, right? But similar for the business. If you can be $10 million in year 5, inevitably you must be $7 million in year 3, or, you have 20 employees, you must have at least 10 by, and then you work back the same way to year 1. And then the great part about that is you can move that from the longer term visioning by then taking year 1 and breaking it down into quarters, right, with the same process, and then it gives you what you need to do that quarter. But the great part about it is, because you work action items off of the quarterly vision, the great part about that is connecting back to the future. You can hold the context by saying, hey, the task I need to do today to achieve my quarterly goal, it's not just about achieving my quarterly goal. That's what inevitably is going to have the 5-year vision happen, because I've worked backwards and it's inevitable. So I love that process as well.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for going through the details of that to help us understand. Excellent. So, you're a leader. That's mostly who our audiences are, and you have done this work, and you've got this vision that you have for yourself. Then, what about that do you bring authentically into the relationships you have with the people that you're leading?
I mean, listen, the easy thing for me to say is all of it. And again, listen, I run various companies. You have employees. I'm not saying, there is this, there's one school that says, fully open book, financials management, whatever. Other people don't believe in that. I think you need to find out, part of authenticity is finding out what's true for you, what works for you, and your inner truth. So I'm not proposing that you need to, be 100% transparent if that doesn't sit well with you. But I think, in terms of, listen, the more you share with your team about your vision, about your why, about what you care about what you're, looking to achieve, certainly on the business side. And I would suggest even, if you encourage them to have a personal goal within that, you share your personal goal within that, whether it's related to your family or it's related to, a nonprofit or cause that you care about, as long as you invite them in, because if they're just building the company for you to be able to support whatever cause or to send your kids to an Ivy League school or whatever your goal is, but you need to bring them into the process. And, what happens, I think, a lot of times is that business owners, entrepreneurs, and C-level executives are afraid, if they really encourage their people to get in touch with what they want and their vision and their goals and their bigger why and the impact, that they'll leave.
Right.
And that absolutely there's a risk of that. In fact, I do think from one way you do increase the chances, but the truth is if you don't do that, they're going to leave for other reasons, because they're going to be dissatisfied. And they're going to not, if they're not really pursuing what fulfills them, you're going to lose them. It's even more so, and this is not a negative way. I'm not one of these people who's like, the millennials. I actually think a lot of them are much more connected to being purpose-driven, and I think it's wonderful. But I think they are even, in my grandfather's generation, the level of loyalty on both sides from employer to employee was totally different than even in mine. And it's certainly different, as you get younger down the employee scale. And millennials are about to make up the majority of the workforce in the next couple of years. So, but my point is that I think you'll lose them anyway. And even worse than that, if you're not really giving people a place where they can learn and grow and fulfill their personal goals and whatever, the worst thing is that they actually don't leave, but they basically quit you while they're still employed.
Right.
And the loss of passion, innovation, efficiency, all that stuff is so undermeasured. So I think it's really a no-brainer to really support your people to learn and grow. And if that sometimes has them move on from you, then that's all good.
So if you and that goes contrary to what a lot of folks, maybe in my generation, were raised with: keep business and personal separate. So are there some first few steps that you would recommend folks take that maybe ease people into that, so they can get some success in seeing that if they are willing to be a little more open, a little more vulnerable with their goals and perspective, and what kind of impact that ends up having on the employees or on the organization.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I get it. It's a process. We're all on a journey, right? So, start small, like anything else. If you've never done it before and you're comfortable with it, whatever, you don't need to reveal your deepest, darkest secret, in meeting one, or ever, potentially, But, start small, whether it's, some family goal, or a situation that, you care about. I mean, have a meeting where you share something that you're excited about, proud about in your life, and talk about how your kid, was on the honor roll, in school, and then invite other people to share, stuff like that, right? That's simple, something that's relatively safe, but you're now moving beyond just the business, whatever, or share about a cause or charity or spiritual, religious organization, whatever you're involved in, that's really meaningful to you. But again, have other people share as well. And really, the key thing in these situations is that you need to really, it's one of my other tenets of building authentic business relationships, is this care and be interested, right? So what you can't do is just share yours and then just have people do it because I told you to or whatever and not really care. Really be interested. If somebody's, excited about X or they're involved in Y cause or whatever, be interested. And it should be interesting. Your people, what do they care about? Ask follow-up questions, keep it in mind. Ask them how it's going, on an ongoing basis. So if you care and be interested and are really open to hearing it, then that's great. And then if you are, as the leader, it's up to you to set the tone, to open the space, right? The more authentic you are, the more authentic and open your people will be, right? You need to lead the way. It's the reason why when we do, for example, going back to the authentic conversations about race events, we will, myself and whoever co-facilitates with me, which is sometimes my wife these days, or sometimes, other folks, usually, it's a person of color because I'm white, but we will each share a very sort of personal experience, usually from our childhood, because going back to early years is a big, is an access way in that project. But as the facilitators and the leaders, we open the space by doing a deep share because that creates a different environment. So the more you're willing to do that, and again, listen, if we're just starting out with, hey, what you're proud about, in your family, I'm not saying you have to go, but you still should model that in the best way you can to openly share, because none of your team is going to go deeper than you've been willing to go, certainly not in the beginning. Right. Over time, when you built the muscle, they may take you even deeper than you, but in the beginning, you need to lead the way.
Perfect. Okay. This podcast was brought to you by Bigger Brains, online training that won't bore you to tears. Expand the minds of your workforce at getbiggerbrains.com. Thanks for tuning in to Permission to Speak. If you want to increase collaboration and innovation in your organization, check out more resources available at speakingpractically.com or give me a call, Kelly Vandever, at 770-597-1108.